The sound of a shattering whiskey bottle cut through the evening hum of Redemption Creek, drawing Caleb Jennings' attention away from his lukewarm coffee. Outside the saloon window, beneath the amber glow of a single street lamp, a woman was stumbling backward into the muddy street, her hand pressed against her bleeding lip. Caleb set his cup down slowly, the ceramic clinking against the wooden table. He'd ridden into town just hours ago, trail-worn and seeking nothing more than a night's rest before continuing west. Trouble wasn't something he sought, but it had a way of finding him nonetheless. The year was 1876, and the promise of a new life had drawn many to these frontier towns scattered across the Wyoming Territory. Caleb had been drifting for 3 years since losing his ranch in Colorado, carrying little more than his saddle, his Colt revolver, and memories he preferred to keep buried beneath the dust of the trail. Through the window, he watched as a burly man with a thick beard and expensive boots followed the woman into the street. Even from this distance, Caleb could see the man's face contorted with rage. "Think you can steal from me, girl?" The man shouted, grabbing the woman by her arm and yanking her toward him. She struggled against his grip. "I didn't steal nothin', Mr. Harker. I earned that money fair." Her resistance earned her a backhanded slap that sent her sprawling into the mud. The few passers-by quickly diverted their eyes and hurried along. No one wanted to cross Harvey Harker, owner of the largest silver mine in the territory. Caleb remained seated, fingers tightening around his cup. This wasn't his fight. He was just passing through. Getting involved would only complicate things, and complications were something he'd been avoiding since leaving Colorado. The woman attempted to rise, her copper-colored dress now stained with mud. She was young, perhaps mid-20s, with dark hair tumbling from what had once been an elegant arrangement. Even in distress, there was a dignity to her movements, a determination that caught Caleb's attention. Harker grabbed her again, this time by her hair. "You work for me, Zara. Everything you earn belongs to me, that's the arrangement." "I never agreed to that," she protested, wincing as he twisted her hair tighter. "I sing at your saloon, nothing more. The tips are mine." Another blow caught her across the face, blood spattered onto her dress. Something snapped inside Caleb. Before he realized what he was doing, he was pushing through the batwing doors of the saloon, his hand resting on the well-worn grip of his revolver. "That's enough," he said, his voice cutting through the evening air like a knife. Harker turned, surprise registering on his face before hardening into contempt. "Mind your business, cowboy. This doesn't concern you." "I'm making it my concern," Caleb replied, stepping closer. "Let her go." The woman Zara stared at him with wide eyes, a mixture of fear and hope swirling in their hazel depths. Harker's laugh was ugly. "You must be new in town. Nobody tells Harvey Harker what to do in Redemption Creek." "First time for everything," Caleb said, taking another step forward. What happened next occurred in a blur. Harker shoved Zara aside and reached for the gun at his hip. Caleb was faster, but he didn't draw. Instead, he closed the distance between them and drove his fist into Harker's stomach, doubling the larger man over. Before Caleb could press his advantage, something crashed against the back of his head. Stars exploded in his vision as he stumbled forward. He turned to see one of Harker's men holding a broken chair leg. "Get him, boys," Harker wheezed, straightening up. "Teach this drifter what happens when you interfere with Harvey Harker's business." 2 more men emerged from the saloon. Caleb managed to block the first punch, but a boot to his ribs sent him to one knee. Pain blossomed in his side. The next few minutes were a flurry of fists and boots as the men worked him over methodically. Through swelling eyes, Caleb caught glimpses of Zara being restrained by Harker, forced to watch the beating. He took a particularly vicious kick to his stomach and collapsed face first into the mud. "That's enough," Harker finally called. "Let's make sure our friend here remembers his lesson." Rough hands dragged Caleb to his knees. Harker approached, pulling a knife from his boot. Caleb braced himself, but instead of plunging the blade into him, Harker grabbed a handful of Caleb's dark hair and cut a ragged chunk from it. "A souvenir," Harker said with a cruel smile, pocketing the hair. "Next time, it'll be your ear. Get him on his horse and point him out of town." They dragged Caleb to where his chestnut gelding was hitched outside the saloon. With considerable effort, they hoisted him onto the saddle. "Ride out and don't come back, cowboy," Harker warned. "And remember, Zara Gardner belongs to me. Next time you won't walk away." As they slapped his horse's rump, sending it trotting out of town, Caleb's last sight was of Zara's face, tears streaming down her bruised cheeks as Harker dragged her back toward the saloon. The horse knew to follow the trail, even as Caleb slumped in the saddle, consciousness fading in and out. He didn't know how long they traveled before the gelding stopped beside a small creek. Caleb slid from the saddle, landing hard on the ground. The cool water was tantalizingly close, but darkness claimed him before he could reach it. When Caleb awoke, dawn was breaking. Every inch of his body throbbed with pain. His face felt swollen and tight, and breathing sent sharp pains through his ribs. He dragged himself to the creek and drank deeply, then splashed water on his face, wincing as it touched his cuts. His horse grazed nearby, faithful as always. Caleb pulled himself up using a nearby tree and assessed his situation. His money was gone. They'd emptied his pockets while he was unconscious. His gun remained in its holster, but they'd taken his ammunition. All he had left was his horse, the clothes on his back, and a small hunting knife in his boot they'd missed. Common sense told him to ride on. Continue west, find work at another ranch, forget Redemption Creek and the woman with the determined eyes. But as he painfully mounted his horse, Caleb found himself turning back toward town instead of away from it. He wouldn't be the first fool to die for a woman he didn't know, but something about Zara Gardner's dignity in the face of cruelty had stirred something long dormant inside him. Maybe it was a death wish, or maybe, just maybe, it was a chance at redemption. The ride back to town took longer than it should have. Caleb stopped frequently, each movement sending pain shooting through his battered body. By mid-afternoon, he'd reached the outskirts of Redemption Creek, but instead of riding directly into town, he guided his horse through a wooded area that would bring him in from the east side, away from the main street. At the edge of town stood a small, weathered church. Beside it was an equally modest house, the parson's residence, he guessed. Caleb dismounted carefully and tied his horse to a hitching post behind the church, out of sight from the main road. The door opened at his second knock. A man in his 60s with kind eyes and a silver beard regarded Caleb with immediate concern. "Good Lord, son, what happened to you?" "Disagreement with some locals," Caleb replied, his split lip making speech painful. "Are you the parson?" "I am, Parson Thomas Riley. Come in, come in." He ushered Caleb inside. "Martha, bring hot water and bandages." A plump woman with graying hair appeared from the back room, gasping at the sight of Caleb. "Oh, you poor man, sit before you fall." Caleb gratefully sank into a wooden chair. "I appreciate the help, but I can't stay long." "I need information more than doctoring. Information can wait until we've tended those wounds," Martha insisted, disappearing to fetch supplies. Parson Riley studied Caleb curiously. "You're not from around here." "Just passing through," Caleb confirmed, "or I was." "Harvey Harker's work, I'd wager," the parson said, his expression darkening. "Not many others in town capable of this kind of meanness." Caleb nodded slightly. "You know him well, too well. He came to Redemption Creek 5 years ago, bought the silver mine when it was struggling. Turned it profitable quickly, no one asked how. Now he owns half the town, including the Golden Nugget Saloon." Martha returned with a basin of steaming water, clean cloths, and a bottle of whiskey. "This will sting," she warned, pouring some of the alcohol onto a cloth. Caleb hissed as she cleaned his cuts. "I'm looking for information on a woman who works at Harker's saloon. Name's Zara Gardner." The couple exchanged glances. "Poor child," Martha said softly. "She arrived about a year ago, looking for her brother who'd come west to work the mines. Found out he'd died in a cave-in at Harker's operation. No family, no money to return east. Harker offered her work singing at the saloon. She has a voice like an angel," the parson added. "But Harker, well, he doesn't let anyone forget what they owe him. Especially not someone as beautiful as Zara. He beats her regularly," Martha said bluntly, wrapping a bandage around Caleb's hand. "We've offered her sanctuary here, but she's afraid. Harker has threatened to burn the church if we interfere." Caleb absorbed this information silently. "Does she live at the saloon?" "No," Parson Riley replied. She has a small cabin at the edge of town past the blacksmith's. Harker lets her keep that much independence at least. Martha finished bandaging the worst of Caleb's wounds. You'd best be on your way, son. If Harker's men catch you in town. I understand. Caleb stood carefully. Thank you both, I won't forget your kindness. What's your name, young man? The parson asked. Caleb Jennings. Well, Mr. Jennings, whatever you're planning, be careful. Harker doesn't fight fair. Neither do I, Caleb replied, his voice hard. Not anymore. He waited until dusk before making his move. The shadows would provide some cover, and most of Harker's men would be at the saloon, preparing for the evening's business. Caleb left his horse at the church and made his way through the back alleys of Redemption Creek. The blacksmith shop was easy to find, and beyond it, set back from the road, stood a small cabin. Smoke curled from its chimney, and warm light glowed behind drawn curtains. Caleb approached cautiously, skirting the edge of the property to ensure he wasn't seen. He was about to knock when the door opened. Zara Gardner stepped out onto the small porch, a bucket in hand, likely heading to the nearby well. She froze when she saw him, the bucket clattering to the wooden planks. You, she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. You're supposed to be gone. If Harker's men see you, I know the risk, Caleb interrupted. May I come in, just for a moment? She hesitated, then nodded, quickly retrieving the bucket and ushering him inside. The cabin was small but neat, with simple furnishings and a few personal touches: a quilt on the bed, a small shelf of books, dried flowers in a jar. In the light of the oil lamp, Caleb could see her injuries more clearly. Her bottom lip was split, and a bruise colored her left cheek. Still, her beauty was undeniable, with high cheekbones, expressive eyes, and dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. You look terrible, she said, her voice a mixture of concern and disbelief. Why did you come back? I couldn't ride away, Caleb admitted. Not after what I saw. Zara filled a cup with water and handed it to him. You should have. Harker won't stop until you're dead now. How long has he been treating you this way? She turned away, busying herself with straightening items on a small table. It doesn't matter, it's just how things are. It doesn't have to be, Caleb said. You could leave. A bitter laugh escaped her. And go where, with what money? Harker takes most of what I earn, says I owe him for my brother's burial expenses. Your brother who died in his mine, Caleb stated flatly. Zara's eyes widened. How did you know about Zachary? The parson and his wife told me. They seem to care about you. They're good people. Too good for this town, she sighed, sinking into a chair. Why are you really here, Mr. Jennings? Caleb Jennings, and I'm here because I want to help. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Caleb was silent for a moment, searching for an answer that made sense even to himself. Because I've spent too long riding away from things that matter, he finally said. And sometimes, a man needs to take a stand, even when the odds are against him. Zara studied him, her expression unreadable. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both, Caleb admitted with a slight smile that pulled at his split lip. A noise outside made them both tense. Footsteps approached the cabin. It's Harker, Zara whispered, panic flaring in her eyes. He comes by most evenings before I head to the saloon. Caleb scanned the room, looking for options. Is there a back door? She shook her head. Just the root cellar, through that trapdoor. She pointed to a small hatch in the floor near the stove. Without hesitation, Caleb lifted the hatch. The space below was dark and cramped, but it would have to do. He lowered himself down just as a heavy knock sounded at the door. Coming, Zara called, her voice remarkably steady. She closed the trapdoor, leaving Caleb in darkness. From below, he could hear muffled voices as Zara greeted Harker. The floorboards creaked above as the mine owner entered the cabin. You're looking well, considering, Harker's voice carried through the wooden planks. That lip healing up. Yes, Mr. Harker, thank you for asking. Got a full house tonight. Miners just got paid. I expect you to be at your best, of course. Heavy footsteps moved around the cabin. You expecting company, Zara? 2 cups on the table. Caleb tensed, his hand moving to his knife. Oh, Martha Riley stopped by earlier, brought me some of her raspberry preserves. The parson's wife, Harker said, his tone suspicious. Always poking her nose where it doesn't belong. She's kind to me. Too kind. Remember where your loyalties lie, Zara. I'm the one who puts a roof over your head and food on your table. I remember, Mr. Harker. The footsteps moved again, coming closer to the trapdoor. Caleb held his breath. What's this? Blood on your floor. Caleb silently cursed. One of his wounds must have reopened. I cut myself earlier, chopping vegetables. A long pause followed. You know what happens to people who lie to me, don't you, Zara? I'm not lying, Mr. Harker. Please, I need to get ready for tonight's performance. Another pause then. Very well. Be at the saloon in 1 hour and wear the red dress tonight, the one with the low back. Yes, Mr. Harker. The door opened and closed. For several long minutes there was silence. Then the trapdoor lifted and Zara's worried face appeared. He's gone, but he's suspicious, she whispered. You need to leave now. Caleb climbed out, wincing as his ribs protested. I'm not leaving you here. Pack your things. We're both getting out of Redemption Creek tonight. Zara stared at him. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Harker will kill you eventually, Zara. You know that, don't you? She turned away, but not before Caleb saw the truth in her eyes. I have nowhere to go. I have a friend with a ranch in Montana Territory. It's a long ride, but he'd give us work, a place to stay. Us. Her eyes met his. You don't even know me. I know enough, Caleb said softly. I know you deserve better than this. A war of emotions played across Zara's face. And what happens when you tire of protecting me? When you realize I'm not worth the trouble? Caleb moved closer, careful not to touch her. That won't happen. But if you want to part ways once we're safely away from here, that's your choice. All I'm offering right now is a way out. Zara looked around her small cabin at the life she'd built from the ashes of tragedy. It wasn't much, but it was hers or as much hers as anything could be under Harker's shadow. I need to think, she said finally. We don't have much time. If I'm caught here, I know. She took a deep breath. Give me 10 minutes. I'll meet you behind the blacksmith shop. If I'm not there, then I'm not coming. Caleb wanted to argue but knew it would be futile. 10 minutes, he agreed. And Zara, if you're not there, I'll understand, but I won't stop trying to help you. He slipped out the door and disappeared into the growing darkness. The 10 minutes stretched like an eternity as Caleb waited behind the blacksmith shop. His body ached and doubt began to gnaw at him. Was he being a fool, risking his life for a woman he barely knew? And what if she didn't want saving? Just as he was about to give up, a figure emerged from the shadows. Zara approached cautiously, a small bundle clutched to her chest. I thought you weren't coming, Caleb said, relief evident in his voice. So did I, she admitted. But then I realized. I've been afraid for so long I'd forgotten how to be anything else. If I don't leave now, I never will, Caleb nodded. My horse is behind the church. We'll have to share the saddle until we can get you a mount in the next town. They moved through the darkness, keeping to the shadows. The church was just visible in the distance when shouting erupted from the direction of Zara's cabin. He must have gone back, she whispered, fear tightening her voice. He knows I've gone. Run, Caleb urged, taking her hand. They sprinted the remaining distance to the church, pain lancing through Caleb's ribs with every step. His horse nickered softly as they approached. Quickly, he untied the reins and helped Zara mount, then swung up behind her. Hold tight, he whispered, turning the horse toward the trail that led north out of town. They'd barely cleared the church grounds when a shot rang out. The bullet splintered wood from a nearby fence post. There they are, a voice shouted. Caleb dug his heels into his horse's flanks and the animal leaped forward. More shots followed, but they were moving targets in the darkness, already beyond accurate range. They'll follow, Zara said, her voice tight with fear. I'm counting on it, Caleb replied. But we have a head start, and I know these hills better than they do. Instead of taking the main trail north, Caleb guided his horse onto a smaller path that cut east into the foothills. The terrain was rougher, but it would be harder to follow, especially in the dark. They rode hard for nearly an hour before Caleb finally slowed the horse to a walk. They needed to conserve the animal's strength for the long journey ahead. How are you holding up? He asked Zara, who sat rigidly in front of him. I'm fine, she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. I've never done anything like this before. Few have, Caleb said. It takes courage to leave everything behind. She was silent for a moment. I didn't leave much, just a few books, some clothes, nothing that really mattered. What about your singing? The parson said you have an incredible voice. A small laugh escaped her. That's not something you can pack in a bundle, Mr. Jennings. Caleb, he corrected. And no, but it's something you carry with you, something Harker can't take away. They continued through the night, stopping briefly to rest the horse and drink from a clear stream. By dawn, they'd put considerable distance between themselves and Redemption Creek, but Caleb remained vigilant. Harker wasn't a man who would let this insult stand. As the sun rose, they found a sheltered spot in a small grove of pines. Caleb helped Zara dismount, noting her stiff movements. "We'll rest here for a few hours," he said. "The horse needs it, and so do we." Zara nodded, sinking down against a tree trunk. Now, in the clear light of day, Caleb could see the toll the night had taken on her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her bruises stood out starkly against her pale skin. "You should sleep," he suggested, unsaddling the horse to let it graze. "I'll keep watch." "You're injured worse than I am," she countered. "You need rest more than I do." "I've gone longer with less," Caleb replied, but he did sit down, his back against another tree. They lapsed into silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Zara spoke. "Why did you really come back for me?" "The truth this time." Caleb considered the question carefully. 5 years ago, I had a ranch in Colorado. A wife too, Maria, she was everything to me." He paused, the memories still painful. "A group of men came through, claiming to represent a cattle company back east, wanted to buy my land. I refused." Zara watched him, her eyes attentive. "They came back a week later while I was in town getting supplies, burned my house to the ground. Maria was inside." His voice grew hard. "I tracked them for months, found each one, made them pay." "You killed them," Zara said softly. "It wasn't a question," Caleb nodded once. "After that, I couldn't stay in one place, just kept riding, taking work where I could find it, tried to outrun what I'd become." "And then you saw me," Zara supplied. "And then I saw you," he agreed, standing up to Harker, even knowing what he'd do. "It reminded me that there are still things worth fighting for in this world." "I'm sorry about your wife," Zara said. "No one should have to endure that kind of loss." "No, they shouldn't." Caleb's eyes met hers. "Just like no one should have to endure what Harker did to you." Understanding passed between them, the recognition of shared pain, of survival against odds that would break most people. "You should rest now," Zara said gently. "I'll wake you if I hear anything." To his surprise, Caleb found himself nodding. He trusted her, a feeling so foreign after years of trusting no one that it almost didn't register. He settled back against the tree and closed his eyes, drifting into an uneasy sleep. Dreams of fire and gunshots plagued him. Maria's face morphed into Zara's, both women calling for help he couldn't provide. He jolted awake to find Zara kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "You were having a nightmare," she explained, withdrawing her hand quickly. Caleb rubbed his face, wincing as his fingers brushed against the cuts and bruises. "How long was I asleep?" "A few hours. The sun's past its peak now." He looked around, orienting himself. "We should move on. There's a trading post about 10 miles north where we can get supplies." They resumed their journey, the horse moving at a steady pace through increasingly rugged terrain. Caleb kept them off the main trails, instead following game paths and dry creek beds that would be difficult to track. As the afternoon waned, they crested a ridge and saw the trading post in the valley below a cluster of log buildings surrounded by a sturdy fence. "It's run by a Frenchman named Bouchard," Caleb explained. "He deals fair and doesn't ask questions. Will he have horses?" Zara asked, looking back at their mount. "Your gelding can't carry us both all the way to Montana. He usually keeps a few on hand. I have a gold piece in my boot they didn't find. Should be enough for a horse and some supplies." They approached the trading post cautiously. 3 other horses were hitched outside, belonging to trappers by the look of their gear. Bouchard greeted them warmly until he saw Caleb's battered face. "Mon Dieu, my friend, you look like you wrestled a mountain lion." "Something like that," Caleb replied with a wry smile. "We need supplies, Jean, and a horse for the lady." The Frenchman's eyes shifted to Zara, noting her bruises with a frown. "I see. Come inside." The trading post was well stocked with everything from ammunition to coffee to clothing. While Bouchard helped Zara find suitable riding clothes, Caleb selected essential supplies: jerky, coffee, flour, and ammunition for his revolver. Trouble follows you, eh? Bouchard asked quietly when they were alone for a moment. Not for much longer, Caleb replied. We're heading north. Montana way. The Frenchman nodded thoughtfully. I have a good mare, not young but steady, good for a lady rider, and I will throw in a saddle, old but solid. That's generous, Jean. I only have the one gold piece, Bouchard waved dismissively. You saved my life on the Powder River, remember? Consider this partial payment of that debt. After making their purchases, they spent the night in a small cabin behind the trading post that Bouchard kept for travelers. It was the first time since leaving Redemption Creek that they felt safe enough to truly rest. As they prepared a simple meal of beans and salt pork, Zara watched Caleb move around the small space, noting how he favored his right side. Let me see your ribs, she said suddenly. Caleb glanced up in surprise. They're fine. They're not. You wince every time you move. She approached him, determination in her eyes. I've had enough broken ribs to know the signs. Let me check. After a moment's hesitation, Caleb unbuttoned his shirt. Zara inhaled sharply at the sight of the dark bruises covering his torso. Harker's men did a thorough job, she said, her fingers gently probing his rib cage. 2 broken, I think, maybe 3. Nothing that won't heal, Caleb said, trying not to react to her touch. We need to bind them properly. She tore strips from one of the new shirts they'd purchased. Arms up. Caleb complied, watching her face as she worked. Her expression was intent, focused on the task, but there was a gentleness in her hands that belied her businesslike manner. You've done this before, he observed. My father was a doctor, she explained. I helped in his practice sometimes before he died. My mother wanted me to become a nurse, but I wanted to sing. And your brother, how did he end up in the mines? Zara's hands stilled for a moment. After our parents died, we had few options. Zachary heard about the silver strike out west. Thought he could make his fortune and come back for me. She resumed binding Caleb's ribs. I waited a year with no word, finally sold everything and came looking for him, found his grave instead. I'm sorry, Caleb said softly. Zara secured the bandage and stepped back. There. That should help with the pain when we ride. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them. A recognition, perhaps, of the toll their separate paths had taken and the strange chance that had brought them together. Thank you, Caleb said, the words encompassing more than just the bandaging. Zara nodded, a small smile touching her lips. We should eat. Tomorrow will be another long day. They set out at dawn, Zara riding the mare Bouchard had provided. She looked different in her new attire, canvas trousers, a sturdy shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her face from the sun. Less like a saloon singer and more like a woman ready to face the frontier. For 3 days, they rode north, keeping to the wilderness and avoiding settlements. They fell into an easy rhythm, making camp each evening, sharing stories as they ate. Caleb spoke of his years on the ranch, of the cattle drives and the changing seasons. Zara told him of her childhood in Pennsylvania, of singing in church choirs and her dreams of performing on stage. On the 4th day, they crossed into Montana Territory. The landscape opened up before them, vast prairies giving way to distant mountains. How much further to your friend's ranch? Zara asked as they made camp that evening. Another 3 days, maybe 4, Caleb replied, building a small fire. Depends on the weather. Spring storms can come up quickly here. As if summoned by his words, dark clouds began gathering on the horizon. We should find better shelter, Zara suggested. Eyeing the clouds warily, Caleb nodded. There's an old line shack about 2 miles east. Used to belong to the Broken Spur outfit before they went under. Should still be standing. They packed quickly and rode through the gathering darkness. The first fat drops of rain were falling as the small cabin came into view, a crude but solid structure nestled against a rocky outcropping. Inside, they found it dusty but intact. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a narrow cot stood in the corner. Caleb quickly built a fire while Zara tended to the horses in the lean-to attached to the cabin. By the time she returned, soaked from the short trip, the fire was crackling merrily, casting a warm glow throughout the small space. That feels wonderful, she sighed, holding her hands toward the flames. Thunder boomed outside, making her jump slightly. Caleb handed her a cup of hot coffee, their fingers brushing in the exchange. Storms set in for the night, he observed. "We're lucky we found this place." Zara nodded, settling onto a wooden crate near the fire. "I never thought I'd be grateful for a one-room shack in the middle of nowhere," she said with a small laugh. "Beats being out in that," Caleb replied, gesturing toward the window where rain lashed against the glass. They prepared a simple meal and ate in comfortable silence, the storm raging outside contrasting with the peaceful atmosphere within. As they cleaned up, Caleb gestured to the cot. "You take it, I'll sleep by the fire." "Don't be ridiculous," Zara countered. "Your ribs need proper rest." "You take the cot." "I'm not taking the bed while you sleep on the floor, Zara," she raised an eyebrow. "Then we'll share it. It's wide enough if we're careful." Caleb hesitated, surprised by her pragmatism. "Are you sure?" "We're adults, Caleb, and we've been traveling together for days." "I trust you." She said it simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Later, as they lay side by side on the narrow cot, both staring up at the cabin's rough-hewn ceiling, Caleb found himself acutely aware of her presence, the gentle rhythm of her breathing, the faint scent of wildflowers that somehow clung to her despite days on the trail. "Caleb." Zara's voice was soft in the darkness. What will happen when we reach your friend's ranch?" He turned his head to look at her profile, illuminated by the dying firelight. "What do you want to happen?" She was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. For so long, I've just been surviving. Not really living." "You can do whatever you want now," Caleb said. "My friend Jim has connections in Helena. There are theaters there, places where you could sing." "And you, what will you do?" It was Caleb's turn to be silent. The question had been circling in his mind for days. "I don't know either. I've been drifting for so long." Zara shifted slightly, turning to face him. Maybe we could figure it out together." The question hung in the air between them, laden with possibility. Caleb reached out slowly, his fingertips just barely touching her cheek. "I'd like that," he said softly. The storm continued through the night, but inside the small cabin, something new had taken root, a tentative hope, a chance at beginning again. Morning brought clear skies and a world washed clean by the rain. They rode with renewed purpose, the shared moment from the night before creating an unspoken bond between them. By midday of the third day, they crested a hill and saw the sprawling Broken Arrow Ranch spread out before them, acres of grassland dotted with cattle, a cluster of buildings nestled in a protected valley, smoke rising from the main house chimney. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed. "Jim's done well for himself," Caleb agreed. "Started with almost nothing 15 years ago." They were spotted as they approached. A tall man with graying hair and a weathered face emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the sun. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by a wide grin. "Caleb Jennings, you old wolf," he called, striding forward to meet them. "Thought you'd fallen off the edge of the earth." Caleb dismounted, wincing slightly as his ribs protested. "Jim Hollister, still ugly as ever, I see." The men clasped hands warmly. Jim's smile faded as he took in Caleb's bruised face and then shifted his gaze to Zara. "Looks like you've got a story to tell," he said, his eyes moving between them. "A long one," Caleb confirmed. "This is Zara Gardner." Zara, Jim Hollister, the best horseman in 3 territories and the worst poker player. Jim laughed, tipping his hat to Zara. "Madam, any friend of Caleb's is welcome at the Broken Arrow. Come on inside. Margaret will have my hide if I keep you standing out here." Margaret Hollister proved to be a practical, warm-hearted woman who immediately took charge, showing Zara to a guest room and insisting on examining Caleb's injuries herself. "Broken ribs, bruised kidneys, and probably a mild concussion," she diagnosed, her expression severe. "What kind of trouble did you find this time, Caleb Jennings?" Over dinner, Caleb and Zara took turns explaining the events that had brought them to the ranch. Jim's face darkened at the mention of Harker. "Man's got a reputation that's spread even this far," he said grimly. "Controls the law in Redemption Creek, from what I've heard." "He won't let this go," Caleb acknowledged. "Not until he finds us." Jim exchanged a look with his wife. "Well, he'll have a hard time finding you here." Broken Arrow hands stand together. The days stretched into weeks. Caleb's injuries healed, and he began working alongside Jim's cowboys, his natural skill with horses making him a valuable addition to the ranch. Zara helped Margaret with the household and spent time with the Hollister's daughter, teaching her to sing. On Saturday evenings, the ranch hands would gather in the main house, and Zara would sing for them everything from hymns to folk songs to opera arias she'd learned in her youth. Her voice, rich and expressive, never failed to captivate her audience. One such evening in late June, as Caleb watched her singing, he realized with startling clarity that he was falling in love with her. It wasn't just her beauty or her voice, but her resilience, her kindness, the way she'd embraced this new life with courage and grace. Later that night, they walked together under a sky brilliant with stars, a comfortable silence between them. "Jim offered me a permanent position today," Caleb said finally. "Foreman of the North Range." Zara glanced at him. "That's wonderful. Will you take it? I'm thinking about it." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "But it depends. On what? On you." Caleb took a deep breath. "These past weeks, they've meant everything to me, Zara. Being with you, watching you bloom away from Harker's shadow. I never thought I'd feel this way again after Maria, but... She prompted softly when he hesitated. "But I love you," he said simply. "And if you don't feel the same, I understand. You've been through hell, and the last thing you need is..." Zara silenced him by stepping forward and placing her fingers gently against his lips. "I love you too, Caleb Jennings. I think I started falling for you the moment you stepped in to defend me, even knowing what it would cost you." Caleb caught her hand in his, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "I know," she whispered. "That's part of why I love you." Their first kiss was tentative, gentle, a promise of healing and new beginnings. When they returned to the ranch house, hand in hand, Jim and Margaret exchanged knowing smiles but said nothing. 2 months later, they were married in the small church in Helena, with the Hollisters standing as witnesses. Zara wore a simple white dress, her dark hair adorned with wildflowers. Caleb, in a new suit, watched her walk down the aisle with wonder in his eyes, scarcely believing his good fortune. That same week, Zara was offered a position singing at Helena's Grand Theater 2 nights a week. It was a long ride from the ranch, but worth it to see her dream realized at last. Life settled into a pleasant rhythm. Caleb thrived as foreman, respected by the ranch hands for his fair treatment and skill. Zara split her time between the ranch and her performances, each journey to town an adventure they often shared. They built a small house on Broken Arrow land, a cozy 2-room cabin that soon became home. In the evenings, Zara would often sing while Caleb played the harmonica he'd carried with him on his travels, a simple harmony that symbolized their life together. It was nearly a year after they'd fled Redemption Creek when trouble finally found them. Caleb was working in the corral when a ranch hand rode in at a gallop. "Riders coming," the young cowboy reported, breathless. 6 men, heavily armed, asked specifically for the ranch foreman. Caleb felt a chill settle in his stomach. "Get Jim. Tell the women to stay inside." By the time the riders appeared on the ridge overlooking the ranch, Caleb, Jim, and 10 ranch hands were waiting, rifles ready. Caleb recognized Harker immediately, sitting tall on his black stallion, flanked by 5 hard-looking men. "That's far enough," Jim called as the group approached. "State your business." Harker raised his hand, signaling his men to stop, his eyes fixed on Caleb. "I've come for what's mine, Jennings, the woman, and justice for what you stole from me." "Zara Gardner is my wife now," Caleb replied steadily, "and she never belonged to you in the first place." Harker's face darkened with rage. "You're a dead man, cowboy, you and everyone who stands with you." Jim stepped forward. "This is Broken Arrow land, mister. We don't take kindly to threats. You're outnumbered and outgunned. I suggest you turn around and ride out while you still can." "Or what?" Harker sneered. "Or I'll have the pleasure of escorting you to the territorial marshal myself," came a new voice. From behind the ranch house emerged a man wearing a silver star on his vest, flanked by 4 deputies. "Marshal Thomas Burke, and you must be Harvey Harker." Harker's expression flickered with uncertainty. "This doesn't concern the law, Marshal." "I think it does." Burke approached calmly. "I've got quite a file on you, Harker. Intimidation, extortion, suspected murder. The territorial governor is very interested in cleaning up operations like yours." "You have no jurisdiction in Wyoming," Harker protested. "True," the marshal acknowledged. But I do have jurisdiction over you the moment you crossed into Montana Territory, and I have witnesses who place you at the scene of a stagecoach robbery just 3 miles south of here last week." Harker's men exchanged nervous glances. One of them quietly backed his horse away from the group. "This is absurd," Harker blustered. "I came for justice against this man who stole my employee." "Your employee?" The cabin door opened and Zara stepped out, her head held high. "I was never your property, Harvey." Harker's eyes narrowed as he saw her. "You'll regret this betrayal, Zara." "The only thing I regret," she replied calmly, "is not leaving sooner." The marshal nodded to his deputies, who moved to surround Harker and his remaining men. "You gentlemen are under arrest. I suggest you come peacefully." For a tense moment, it seemed Harker might resist. His hand hovered near his gun. Then, seeing he was outnumbered, he slowly raised his hands. "This isn't over, Jennings," he spat as the deputies disarmed him. "Not by a long shot." Caleb watched as Harker and his men were led away. Only when they disappeared from sight did he allow the tension to leave his body. He turned to find Zara beside him, her eyes reflecting the same mix of relief and disbelief he felt. "It's really over?" she asked quietly. Caleb pulled her into his arms. "It's over. He can't hurt us anymore." That evening, they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. Zara leaned against Caleb's shoulder, his arm wrapped securely around her. "I never thought I'd be free of him," she admitted. "Even after all this time, a part of me was always looking over my shoulder, waiting." Caleb pressed a kiss to her temple. "You don't have to look back anymore, only forward." Zara smiled, taking his hand and placing it gently on her stomach. "Forward it is then. We're going to need a bigger cabin." Caleb stared at her, understanding dawning slowly. "You mean?" Her smile widened. "The doctor and Helena confirmed it yesterday. We're having a baby, Caleb." Joy unlike anything he'd ever known surged through him. He gathered Zara in his arms, laughing and crying all at once. "A baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Our baby." As the last light of day faded from the sky, they held each other close, two souls who had found in each other the healing they'd thought impossible. From the moment, Caleb had stepped in to defend a woman he didn't know, risking everything for the sake of what was right. Their paths had been intertwined. The price he'd paid that day in Redemption Creek had brought him the greatest reward of all, a love that had saved them both.